Welcome to Learning Programming for Finance 372. Learning Python is a lifelong process. Even the most experienced programmers are constantly learning how to use new libraries and improving their coding techniques. In this video, I'll cover perhaps the single most important skill a programmer can have, the ability to efficiently learn more about programming. I'll focus today on how to learn within the context of Jupyter Lab. So the first thing you should know is that you can always find out more about a function by using the help command. So let's import the math library and then just ask for some help with math. Help will tell you that math is a built-in module and it's got all these different functions here, and we can read more about each one of them. So that's kind of a lot of information, but we can always ask for help on individual functions by using help math.log, for example, and that will tell us that log is the logarithm of base x to the given base, and if the base is not specified, it's the natural log. So okay, that's how I use the log function. Another example of this, if we import pandas, we can ask for help on the read CSV function, something we've used a lot before. And we can learn all this stuff about parameters we can pass to this function. So there's a lot more you can do with read CSV you didn't even know about until you did the help function. So it'll help us for this video if we introduce a new concept that we're unfamiliar with and then demonstrate how you would get help about it and how you'd learn more about it. The new concept will be tuples. All right, so I'll give us a new tuple here and I'll just say it's 2, 3, and banana. So in short, what a tuple is it's a combination of a few different pieces of data smushed together into sort of one multidimensional variable. All right, so now we have defined this thing. We can do help for tup, and it will tell us, what is this tuple thing? So this is a tuple object. So this is a built-in immutable sequence. And it tells us all the things we can do with tuples that are built in. So the add thing is built in, so I can do one tuple plus another. We can do contains to see what's in it. We can do get item to find out what, get one of the particular items out of it, etc., etc., etc. So all these methods that have the double underscores before and after, these work by saying add and then parentheses one tuple, comma another tuple, or contains one tuple, comma a key. So this notation of self, this means that you say, get item, and then you put a tuple here, and then you can say, get me a key out of the tuple. So as in a demonstration of this, let's go down here, and we see here that one of these is length, one of these functions is length, so we can do length of our tuple, and it will tell us 3. And so notice here it's length first, and then tuple. That's because it's got this double underscore thing here. These down here are more traditional methods, where I have to do tuple dot count. Then you can see that this method returns the number of occurrences of a value. So if I did tuple.count of 2, it comes back with 1 because there's one instance of 2 inside my tuple. Another useful thing you can do within Jupyter Lab is if you're over a variable like this, this variable we've created, and I forget okay, what exactly is that again? If I put my cursor over it, I can do Shift Tab, and it comes up with this information here. This is a tuple. The string form is 2, 3, banana. The length is 3. And it tells you a little bit more about what the kind of a thing it is. If you want to keep this open and be able to constantly be looking at a little preview of what's in the contents of every variable, you can do Control-I, and that's going to have this contextual help information. We can drag that over here to be next to our code. And so now if we go to put our cursor over tuple, we know what that is. We go put it over length, it's going to be telling us the contextual help for length. This is returns the number of items in a container, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so sometimes when you're just learning, it's nice to have this contextual help open, and again, that's Control-I. So we can open a data frame to illustrate this a little bit more. So let's do df. So normally when you run this cell here, you load the data frame, but you can't really see immediately what's in it unless you do a separate command like this, df here. All right, but the nice thing with this contextual help is that at any point I can just go put my mouse over df, and it says, we have a data frame. It's got maturity information, data information, yields, etc. Okay, so that's pretty useful. Another thing we'll learn from often is our error messages. So if we do something wrong, Python will tell us what happened, and we have to figure out exactly what that means. So let's do something wrong here. So let's do dfloc I test. All right. So now, if we run this cell, we're going to get an error. So this is a key error. There's a lot of stuff in here telling you exactly what was running and what went wrong. But the key thing is always you find this error and it says key error test. So that's telling you you don't have a key named test. So it's looking in your data frame for a variable, a column named test, but we don't have one here, right? If we go back to our data frame here, we don't have that. So that means, well, we just need to change that to something we do have, and it will work, right? So if we change this to yields, it does work. I also just want to point out that there is a help menu inside Jupyter Lab, right up here. And it's got a lot of nice stuff in it when you look. A reference for both Jupyter Lab and the Markdown that we use. It's got a Python reference. It's got NumPy, SciPy, Matplotlib, all that stuff. So if you want to be, you're working on plotting and you want to get some extra information, you can just put the Matplotlib reference right here. And it's got all the stuff you'd get on the website, but without having to go to the website. All right, so that's all the help you can get without leaving Jupyter Lab. And that can be a lot of valuable information. But oftentimes you will need to leave Jupyter Lab. All right, so let's say I want to do something with these tuples that I don't really know how to do. So let's say I want to add together two different tuples and get a result that combines them the way I want. So let's say I have a new tuple that is 5, -1, and peanut butter. And now let's say my goal is to add this to my previous tuple and get a new result that combines them together. All right, so that's our goal. We want to get back 7, 2, and banana and peanut butter. So we want to add the numbers like numbers, and we want to take the strings and concatenate them together. All right, so my first guess on how to do this is maybe Python is just automatically does this, and I can just do 2 plus 2, 2, and get my answer that way. When I do that, I get something different, which is it makes this into a big super tuple with 6 elements in it. So that's not quite right. All right, so what should I do here? Well, let's go into Google and type add tuples Python. There are a lot of possible results here. My eye is often first drawn to Stack Overflow. So let's look at this thread here and see what this person is asking. So it's asking, can I get A plus B to be the numbers adding instead of concatenating? Okay, so this is exactly the same question we have. You kind of look at this and you say, okay, that looks a little weird. I don't know what this operator thing is. I'm trying to find something I recognize here. Okay, well this looks good. I've used NumPy before. I kind of understand what an array is. So let me copy and paste this over. All right, so we don't have NumPy yet, so we might as well just do that import here. And then our arrays are going to be different. I'm going to take our array and we'll make that out of from our tuple 1, array from tuple 2, and then we'll do this print here. Oh. Okay, so that's not, well, let's see if we fix their code there. Oh. Says a function type error. Add did not contain a loop with matching signature types. Okay, so that's a little cryptic, but it sounds like it's having trouble adding because these are different types here. We have a int here and we have a string here. Okay. So let's try a different idea here. Let's go back here and say, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's see, what do we like? Well, this one looks good. This one is just a single line of code. Doesn't seem like we need to do anything. Well, let's try that. Put that in here. And then we need to do, instead of A and B, we just need to do tuple 2 and tuple 1. We'll just try running that. This gives us a much more explicit error. It's a type error. It says you can't add a int in a string. So it seems to be trying to add together these ints and strings again, which we don't want. All right. Back in here again, try a different idea. Well, I don't really want to go with that operator thing. It still looks ugly. Rather not import anything else. So let's go farther down here. Okay. This one doesn't require any inputs. Let's try this one. Let's change A and B to tup and tup2. Let's give that a try. Aha! Bingo. All right, so honestly, a lot of programming comes down to this. If you figure out how to well define your Google searches and you know how to choose which sources are reliable, you can sort of cut and paste code until you find out an answer that works. Now, the important thing is to not just always rely on this. Once you have something working, you should take the next step to figure out, well, why does this work? All right, so what is this thing? Okay, I'm using this tuple thing here. So this is, I can use my contextual help over here, that this is sort of the constructor. This is how we build a tuple. So this command here is telling it to build a tuple. All right, now I'm getting some help here. I got a zip here. What does zip do? Zip of an iterable, a zip object yielding tuples until an input is exhausted. So then it tells us if you zip A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, I'm still confused. This is weird, right? All right, so then let's go back here and let's say, all right, this thing is called a generator comprehension. All right, so that looks like the key word here if we want to learn more about this. So let's do generator comprehension. We'll do zip. See what we get here. Okay, so this looks like a good place to start. Maybe we go back to some of these other things and look at implementing zip with list comprehensions. That sounds like what we were doing before. This guy loves Python zip function. So now we're learning more about zip. And now you go down the rabbit hole and you think about it a little bit more to the point where this is not a mystery function anymore. Now you get how you could do this more generally. All right, now if we go back to this example, if that hadn't worked, I would have Googled something else a little bit more specific. Like I would have said element-wise tuple addition Python or element-wise tuple concatenation Python. Sometimes your first search, you won't quite know the right words, and you'll find an answer, a question that's related but not quite the same, and you'll learn a few extra keywords you should put in there, and you'll go from there. All right, one important thing when you're asking Professor Google is to know exactly which sources are reliable. All right, so I'd say the 99.99% most reliable sources are first-party documentation. So the websites of the people that make the stuff we're using. So python.org for general Python, and then these websites for the main packages we're using. All right, now if you get third-party documentation, it's not quite as reliable, but it's still pretty reliable if you get it from sources that are pretty good. I consider these sources fairly reliable. Now, of course, you're always going to run into the fact that there's multiple ways to do the same thing. So you'll end up sometimes finding 3 sources telling you 3 different things that are all correct. In this example here, these solutions were correct if these were tuples having only integers in them. All right, and that was the basis of this question here, was we were starting with integers. So a lot of these solutions don't work because we're changing the problem slightly. So that's often going to be something you run into. Sometimes you'll find a not quite right tutorial that'll still tell you something that is useful. The slightly less reliable, but probably the most used resource is this Stack Overflow website. It's got its questions and answers about programming that is moderated well and often has really useful information on it. A few reminders when you're using this is to double check the comments below popular answers. Sometimes you'll get an answer that's from 2012. That's the top accepted answer, but it's been deprecated since then. It doesn't work anymore, or it's not supposed to be used anymore. All right, so for example here, this is a edited last in 2010, and this is a slightly more recent comment that says that map has been semi-deprecated. This is in 2012, so maybe this map operator is not so good anymore, so maybe we should look at some other solutions. Second thing, as I mentioned before, is always check the dates. A lot can change, especially with Python and data analysis over 5 to 10 years. The third thing is check a few different answers if there are extras. Instead of just accepting the first thing you see, think about the different alternatives, which one looks like it's the easiest to implement in your setting, which one you think will work better, which you understand better, because it's always better to use something you understand. And then finally, check other posts that Google finds for you. So if I go back here in my search, you can see that Google lumps together all of the related results that are on this Stack Overflow page. All right, and so nothing else from Stack Overflow will, no matter how far I scroll down here, it's not going to be anything from Stack Overflow. So check these other results if you're not finding something in the first one. And then you can even go for more results from Stack Overflow by clicking that button here. And because Google is the best in the world at searching, it's better to search Stack Overflow using Google than any kind of search on Stack Overflow. All right, those are the tricks I use all the time when trying to solve a new problem in programming. For this class, I encourage you to use all of them, both the tools inside Jupyter Lab and Professor Google. The only rule about this is if you find a solution from a website, to add a link to your notebook indicating where you got it. So let's go back and do that here. Let's go back to our Stack Overflow answer here, and let's copy a link to that, and we'll put that right above here. So we'll say solution from here. Okay, and there's a few reasons we do this. One is it's citing our sources, but 2, it's because if we ever need to go back and help understand this more, or edit it, or see, why isn't this working, then we always know where we got it from. We can go back and find alternatives without having to do our Google searching again.